Woo! Okie dokie. Right. Okay. On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Okay. So Sean Connery decided to leave because he had enough. He had enough of those Italians telling him what to do, not paying him enough. You know, the meeting must have been like, give me some more money, you Italian bastards. You know, and then they were like, hey, what do you want? What do you want from us? We pay you enough money. We give you play James Bond. Hey, what are you doing? What's it going on? Hey. He's like, listen to me, you spaghetti eating prick. You pay me more money, or I'm walking. That was shit. That was shit. Listen to me, you spaghetti eating prick. I can't do it. Something's wrong with me today. I can't do that. Like in my previous videos, I did some pretty good Sean Connery impressions, but I can't seem to do it today. I'm off. I was just off. Anyway, enough about that. So he's gone. He doesn't want to come back. And, you know, fair play to him, really. He's done 5 movies. 5 movies where he's playing the same character, doing the exact same thing, you know, goes into a meeting to see M. Oh, what what's my mission? Oh, 007, this is your mission, blah, blah, blah. Then he goes over to Q and says, give me some gadgets. And then he's just like, oh, 007, here's some gadgets, you know. And then he goes and talks to Moneypenny, you know, and it's all the same thing. And then goes to some country or whatever. There's a villain and he's just like, Mr. Bond, we will put you into a torture chamber and leave one guard waiting at the door and hope that you won't try and escape. Ha. And then he does, and then he saves the world, blah, blah, blah. He must have been getting a little bit bored of the whole thing. And, you know, he wanted to explore other things. In fact, actually, I think I know the film. I think I've seen the film that he did instead of this, which was, I think, a Western. I think he did a Western called, like, Shalako or something. Or, Shalako, you know, which I think I saw that on the telly once. And, so he did that instead of doing this film. And it's fair enough, you know, it's like, don't do a role if you're not feeling it, you know, and if you're not getting paid right and you're not getting the respect from people. And yeah, he was having a bit of a shit time. The paparazzi and things like that were hounding him, and you know, this is, you know, he was at the height of his, well, you know, he's becoming more famous at this time, and you know, this was at the height of Bond mania, and everyone was nuts for Bond and whatnot. So anyway, on Her Majesty's Secret Service, there's a whole documentary about this with George Lazenby, all about George Lazenby, talking about how he got the role. He basically just snuck into the audition. He basically blagged it, lied and said, oh yeah, I've done some acting, blah, 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 blah. You know, all he did was like modelling, and he used to be a car salesman. That was it. If you haven't seen the documentary about George Lazenby and how he became James Bond, I would definitely recommend it because it's very, very good, very insightful. You feel you do like him. You know, he's likable. You know, you feel for his story. You know, where he came from and what he's had to do and all that business. And he shags a lot of women. You know, I mean, wow. You know, impressive, very impressive. But anyway, what do I think to this film? So the James Bond continuity has always been a bit loose, a bit loosey-goosey. It doesn't need to necessarily make sense. Like, each film kind of just works as its own film. You know, the Daniel Craig films start to get a little bit more connective, a little bit. You know, they start to connect. But, you know, like the continuity, schmontinuity, whatever, it doesn't really matter. And James Bond's just sort of like a character who just doesn't age, you know? Like with the whole rebooting the character all the time. He's just a guy that just doesn't age. Don't overthink it. Don't overthink, like, the whole franchise, you know. And it's not like Doctor Who. Like Doctor Who, when a new actor takes on the role, it's explained that he regenerates, you know. It's this isn't like that. It's just sort of loose continuity. So anyway, if we're looking at this as a sequel to the previous one, it doesn't make any sense because you've got Blofeld in this film, doesn't have a scar on his face. He doesn't seem to recognise James Bond in any of the scenes where he's pretending to be Sir Hilary, whatever. I would say actually Telly Savalas is a better Blofeld compared to Donald Pleasance, if we're being honest. That's a hot take. Well, it's probably not a hot take. People probably agree. That's what I think. And then, yeah, like the whole continuity, like, they met in You Only Live Twice. They were, standing opposite each other. Blofeld almost killed him. And it's like, there's no recollection of that or whatever. The continuity there doesn't make any sense. So you just watch it as its own thing, I guess. It's just a reboot. It's a reboot. It's a reimagining, whatever. M is the same. Q is the same. Moneypenny's the same. Blah, blah, blah. I like this film because it tries to be a little bit more serious. It definitely has a very, very serious ending. The ending of this film is very serious. Like, he gets married, but then his wife gets shot. Tracy, played by Rigg, who's probably one of the best Bond girls. If anything, this film has one of the best Bond girls. Rigg, fantastic. I've seen some episodes of the Avengers, not the Avengers, the Marvel thing, but the Avengers, the old TV series. And she's great. She's great in that. She was wonderful in Game of Thrones as well. Yeah, anyway, she's one of the best Bond girls, and she's actually a really good actress. She can act. So you've got all that. You've got the great music. John Barry's score for this film is fantastic. It's one of the best scores. But for me though, yes, it needed Sean Connery. Sean Connery should have been in this film, and they could have written it differently and made it more they could have made it make more sense so it connects to the last film. So it feels like a proper sequel. So it feels like a proper follow-up to the last film. I mean, cutting ahead, even Diamonds Are Forever didn't really feel like a follow-up. And this is just a reboot, but it is and it isn't, it's whatever. Anyway, that's confusing. So anyway, I'm getting to it. I'm getting to my opinion, okay? Because I have mixed feelings about this film, okay? So I've listed all the good stuff, okay? And yeah, okay, if you're watching this like nowadays, like for the first time, and you're like somebody who is if you're a feminist or whatever, you'll hate it just like the last the last bunch of films as well. So this franchise is not for feminists, and it's not for woke people or whatever. Like, women get slapped in this film and punched. James Bond slaps Rigg, and her dad slaps her as well. Gives her a punch, knocks her out. So it's not for you. If it's not for you, it's not for you. But that was a different time. It was a different time, and we won't talk about that. But anyway, forget about that for a minute. It starts off quite well. It feels like a James Bond film. Yeah, the first act, he meets Diana Rigg's dad, Tracy's dad. There's all that stuff. There's a setup, but when it gets into the middle of the film, right, when he's dressed up as he's pretending to be this really posh Sir Hilary, whatever, I don't know what his name is. He's wearing a silly hat and a silly outfit, and then he's also wearing a kilt at one point, and then he's in this building on top of a snowy mountain in the Alps or whatever. The scenery is brilliant. It's great and everything. But this film just gets really boring. It gets really boring. And there's all these women in this facility on top of this mountain. That whole thing, where he shags them all. Well, he doesn't shag them all, but he shags a lot of them. It doesn't make any sense, because a moment ago there was a lovey-dovey montage with him and Diana Rigg. So he kind of cheats on her. He's in a relationship with her, and then he's just like, oh, whatever, I'm just going to shag all these women. And okay, maybe that's the mission. That's his job. He's a secret agent. That's what he's got to do, blah, blah, blah. But there's this really annoying music as well that just keeps getting repeatedly sort of played. It goes, I don't like that. And it's just a bit jammy. They've dubbed his voice. He's wearing a silly kilt. Why is he wearing a kilt? I don't know. Anyway, it's all a bit boring. Some of the action's good, and all that, whatever. There's some good tense moments as well. There's a bit where actually he sneaks into a guy's office, and the guy's going off for lunch or whatever, and then comes back. That's quite a good scene. Yeah, it's quite tense. And there's some good punch-ups in here and there. But then, when he finally gets found out that he's James Bond, Blofeld is like, you're James Bond, haha, British Secret Service, blah, blah, blah. Then the film picks up. Seriously, it goes from being a kind of a annoying, so-so, middle of the road, whatever, kind of not as good as what Sean Connery gave us before type of movie, to then suddenly being the best James Bond movie ever made. Like all the skiing scenes and then the music playing and all that. Brilliant. Because a lot of people talk about this film and they say, oh, it's the best James Bond film. I love it. And it's like, no, it's not. But I can see why. I could see why. When it gets into this bit of the film, this like the second half of the film, or the third act of the film, yes, I totally agree. I can definitely see why people really like passionately love this film and say, oh, it's underrated. And say, yeah, I guess it is underrated. I guess it is. But anyway, all the action is like really good, like the skiing, you know, him escaping. There's a bit of a car chase when he goes down to that little village, and there's a sort of like car race sort of thing, and he meets up with Diana Rigg again, Tracy, and it's wonderful. They fall in love, and then a guy falls into some sort of wood chipper or snow, I don't know what it would. He falls into something that chops him up, and James Bond, you know, George Lazenby says he's got a lot of guts, you know, or he had a lot of guts, or something like that. Something.
He had lots of guts.
Something involving guts. Anyway, that's all really, really good. And then the film ends with this amazing action scene with all your good guy soldiers and your bad guy soldiers. Diana Rigg has a little fight with a henchman. And then what's that thing? Bobsleighing. There's bobsleighing as well. And that's quite exciting. It suddenly becomes like, yes, this would have been amazing if Sean Connery was in it. Yeah. But I mean, I guess the thing is that like a lot of people say that this is more true to the book, which is fair enough. I guess if Sean Connery was in it and they made it more connected to the previous film, I guess maybe it wouldn't have followed the book. I guess it just would have followed the book a little bit, but then it would have tried to just sort of make sense with the previous film. But you know, I as I say, like Sean Connery was tired. He was fed up with the franchise. Didn't want to do it. Wasn't going to be paid enough, so he thought, nah, whatever. But it was a good strategy, you know, on his part, on Sean Connery's part, because this film came out and people weren't so kind with it. It didn't make as much money at the box office. It was a bit dark and depressing. The ending shocked people, and it's kind of a shame that he didn't come back for more. And again, it's in the documentary, but he was given a deal, like one of the best deals ever that you could have been given, you know, pretty average, you know, he's not a bad actor. I'm not saying he's terrible, but like he was inexperienced. And to be offered the deal that he was offered for like 6 more James Bond films. What an idiot. But he was on a lot of drugs because it was the 60s, man, you know? It was the hippie movement. But I just think it is a bit of a shame that he didn't come back, because if he'd have come back, I think Diamonds Are Forever would have been a lot better, because it just would have made more sense. Because that film, like obviously I'll get into that next after this. They brought Sean Connery back, so it feels like a completely different film, and you know, whatever. I'm not going to talk about that just yet. I'll talk about that in a minute. I think it is a shame that he didn't come back for more, because I think, and this is something that other people have said, when you do your first James Bond film, people don't accept you just yet as James Bond. They you know, your film could be good, bad, whatever, middle of the road, whatever, doesn't matter. But people accept you as James Bond once you've made your third movie. You know, it's like Daniel Craig when he did Skyfall. It was like, yes, this is James Bond. Because he did Casino Royale, which was great. And then he did Quantum of Solace, which wasn't as good, which I'll get to later. And then he did Skyfall, which was fantastic. And then it was like, yes, that solidified him as James Bond. Same with Pierce Brosnan. Does GoldenEye, fantastic. Tomorrow Never Dies, yeah, great. World Is Not Enough, yep, he's James Bond. You know, this is going to be the James Bond forever. He's going to be Bond forever, you know. Timothy Dalton only did 2, so people don't really look at him as James Bond, you know. They don't really think of him as Bond. And it's even more so for George Lazenby, because he only did 1 movie and that was it. And so therefore people don't really see him as James Bond, and you know, they don't talk about him. You know, when people say, oh, who's your favourite James Bond? Not many people say George Lazenby. Not many people do that. They either say Sean Connery, Roger Moore, Pierce Brosnan, or Daniel Craig. They never say Timothy Dalton, which is a shame, because I like Timothy Dalton, which I will get to that later. But to wrap this up in a nice neat bow, I do like this film. I would say it has a middle act problem though. It gets really boring and it gets really slow. Again, it's like you thought it was going for like something more serious, and then it goes all jammy and silly. He's got dubbed voice. what's that all about? Then it starts to get really good. Like when he's doing the skiing, all that, the action at the end, brilliant. All really, really good. And then his wife gets shot. Yeah. And as I say, like this is a weird period for like the producers, Cubby Broccoli and the Harry Saltzman. They're like, what do we do? Okay, what do we do? We bring Sean Connery back. Hey, mamma mia, yeah. We try and bring him back. Like they really I think they really realized there. They were like, okay, yeah, we need to bring Connery back. Clearly, he was the cherry on top. So I'm going to talk about Diamonds Are Forever next. So stay tuned for that. Right. Thank you for watching. On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Brilliant soundtrack though. And We Have All the Time in the World gets used again in No Time to Die. So yes, I will talk about that later. But yeah, that's it. Bye. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.